Hey, everybody, welcome to the Daily Objective. And boy, do we have a topic for you. As you know, we are broadcasting live from the Ayn Rand Center, UK. So it's about time we report on what's happening in the United Kingdom. Nothing great to report, I'm afraid. The lockdown talks have not ended, and the architect of the lockdowns, as he was named by the Ayn Rand Center UK on Twitter, the architect of the lockdowns was himself caught on camera kissing one of his aides. Now, if you know anything about COVID, I think it's what laymen would call a kissing disease, a kissing virus. You transfer it when you share a spoon, you transfer it when you kiss, when you do other things that we're going to have an expert on the show to basically explain to you. But generally speaking, it involves physical exchanging of fluids. And that's what he was doing with one of his aides. So, there's sort of this, obviously a scandal. Like, why is this MP kissing his aide? That's maybe one aspect of it. Either he or she is married. That much I picked up.
Both.
But both are married. So it's obviously scandalous. But
sorry, not just MP, the health secretary.
Right. Right. So as I was getting, it's not just an MP is involved in a sexual affair. It's more than that. It's a scandal involving the sort of architect of the lockdown, the guy who's always saying there are no more lockdowns, not enough lockdowns. We need more lockdowns. This is the same guy who's basically going around kissing people. So we have something to talk about. What is the right way to look at this? Should we see this as a big deal, or is this just another of many instances of politicians saying one thing and doing another and thinking they are above the law in a sense, or that they are the exceptions because they are, in charge, so to speak? Well, let's find out. We've got a guy here who, like me, is in America, but may at some point be saluting the Queen and doing what this particular MP, Matt Hancock, tells him. Apparently not.
No. I'll be in the south of Ireland. That's in the EU. We will not salute the Queen.
Well, you never know. England has been known to push the Irish around and take land away from them, in my very, very basic, limited understanding of history. So you may end up needing to salute them after all.
I don't believe in kings and queens, so I will salute no one.
We'll see if your opinion versus the royal military finds equilibrium, or if one of them outranks the other. That is what we'll find out, and that is, as I am about to introduce, Mark Pellegrino.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, and we've got a guy this is a guy, boy, talk about an upgrade. He's got a new camera. He's got a new microphone. He's dressed nice. Looks like he grew a beard. Please welcome Greece's own British resident, Nikos Sotirakopoulos.
Thanks, Rucka. So shall I give some facts on the case and a preliminary take on why I don't consider it? So I wasn't so outraged as the average person, but I think there are some elements in the case that are very interesting. So Matt Hancock was the health secretary, so he was on the forefront on the campaign for things like social distancing. And even when the lockdown was relaxed, that still we needed to be careful. And at that time, when he caught in camera kissing his aides, which was a CCTV closed circuit, so a big part of the case is how was this leaked? So someone had stuff on him and basically probably wanted him out. So he was caught kissing his aide. So this was in May, when there was some relaxation in the measures, but still you should avoid mixing with people from different households. Now, all these, it's very blurry what of these were guidelines, what of these things were you breaking the law. So we live in this mixed legal regime with COVID, which is very clear what exactly he did wrong, but people who have the stomach to follow this say that he technically broke the law. Here's something else very interesting. So initially, he and the Prime Minister did not consider this big enough for him to resign. So the Prime Minister was saying, oh, the guy's doing a great job. Matt Hancock says, I'm sorry, but, and notice he said mostly he's sorry for breaking social distancing. So that was the key for him. But because there was a lot of pressure piling up, one day later, he decided to resign. So what most people brought up is, look, we've been prevented from meeting our beloved ones or even attending things like funerals or marriages because of the guidelines of this guy. Therefore, here we have an issue of hypocrisy, and he needs to be called on his hypocrisy. Now, for me, the reason why I said I'm not super outraged by this, I'm more outraged by the fact that our politicians are basically empty as characters. So this guy didn't consider this is big enough to resign, but when there was pressure, then it became big enough to resign. This shows me someone who hasn't got a lot of essence. And to the people who said, oh, because of Hancock, we couldn't see our beloved ones, may I be a bit harsh and say that, but maybe you should have seen your beloved ones. So maybe you should have traveled because you should make these judgments. And of course, you should take calculated risks. You shouldn't make yourself martyrs. You shouldn't put others in danger. But for example, to his defense, quote, Hancock was at that point probably jabbed and he definitely had COVID. So I don't think that so I don't think he put someone on such a danger by doing this. So again, it makes sense as a calculated risk. So for me, this outrage that is a bit, at some point, is a bit shallow. He should be fiercely criticized for many other things, for the way maybe he handled the pandemic, for the message that we need to protect the NHS to the detriment of many people's health. He probably needs to be condemned for many things, but the fact that he lost his job for this, I found it weird, and I find it a bit a sign of the times. This energy for outrage, the fact that we expect someone to fall in public eye and we almost get pleasure for this. And I don't know about you people, but I couldn't even watch the video. I found it too disgusting, too weird, awkward, I don't know what. So on the one hand, again, for me, politically, Hancock is low, very low in my estimation. But at the same time, all this outrage and the energy that was output on this particular story, for me, I found it a bit counterproductive.
Interesting. I wonder if it's because this guy is a Tory. Is that a fair question, or am I treating you like?
No, I hold the Tories actually in more disdain than Labour. I've said many times that this country deserves to be governed by particularly someone like Jeremy Corbyn, and this is because that's exactly what the conservative part of this country deserves, and that's what they've bought themselves to. So I have zero sympathy for the Tories.
Mark, any thoughts, or should I jump over to the super chat?
Well, I mean, I think this just screams altruism on every single level. I could see why people are outraged, because altruism is about reciprocal self-sacrifice. And when somebody in the clan isn't reciprocating with their pound of flesh, you're going to be justifiably upset because you are sacrificing your life for the sake of this quote unquote larger ideal. They should be too. So there's always a pound of flesh to be seized by somebody in a system like this. And I see it all in his justifications. There wasn't a single statement about his wife that I saw in the articles. He talked about the justification for the lockdowns not being the protection and preservation of human life, but of the NHS. On every level, human beings are these sacrificial animals. And hey, if I'm being led to the altar by this jerk off, I expect him to be losing some appendages too.
That's a great comment, by the way. The way you put it into the context of altruism, that's exactly it. But my only objection is I wasn't willing to do much sacrificing, or if I could get away with it, I could. That's why I traveled to Greece. Now, it wasn't illegal, but again, I consider it a calculated risk. I didn't put anyone of my family in danger. So I never considered that my life should be somehow sacrificed by what that guy said. So again, I understand the outrage. All this behavior is despicable within the context. But again, let's not verify that oh yeah, because I sacrificed, this guy should also sacrifice. No, maybe we should not sacrifice. And this is not a reply to Mark, by the way. I think the way Mark put it is great. Rucka.
All right. Some quick super chats. We've got Hugh James with 199 pounds. He says they bugged the CCTV in a private office. Worrying. What's a CCTV?
Closed
circuit
camera.
Okay, so this
sorry, don't consider completely impossible that it was leaked from inside number 10. And number 10 is, let's say, the equivalent of our White House. But I haven't followed that closely, but I wouldn't be surprised seeing all, because we have all the time leakings of texts. We had the text by the prime minister saying something bad about the health secretary, something like he's hopeless or something like that. So again, because Dominic Cummings, who was, let's say, the big name, he was the equivalent, let's say, of what was the name of I have a mind for this, of Trump's of Steve Bannon. Let's say he was the equivalent of Steve Bannon. He was, let's say, the dark shadow master of puppets, and he was very bitter when he was basically pushed out of number 10. So then he came out with all this dirty stuff about everyone. So that's the situation in the government at the moment. There's a lot of backstabbing and stuff.
Yeah, and please super chat us your favorite Master of Puppets lyrics for direct acknowledgement from us on the show. Bread Sandwich with $1 Canadian, thank you. Marilyn with $3 American, thank you. Jonathan Honig with $4.99 American says, I love Matt Hancock. Rocket is one of my favorites from the 80s. Great video, too. Sounds like he's thinking of some musician from the 80s. Not exactly the same guy, but thanks, Jonathan. We'll check out the song. Christopher Smith with $1.39 Canadian and a drooling emoji. Sammy is bored again with $4.99 says, bravo. Thanks. Yeah, so you know what this kind of reminds me of? A lot of comedians, quote unquote, and commentators and just people that are involved in the culture war, they talk constantly about political correctness. Oh, they won't let us say anything. What happened to comedy? They won't let us say anything. You don't want to say anything offensive. You have nothing edgy to say. These people, they want brand deals. They want career opportunities. They want movie credits. They don't want to say anything offensive, but they talk about political correctness all day, and that is their brand, is talking about political correctness like it's holding them back. So my kind of thing with the lockdowns is people should not have complied with the lockdowns. I had no reason to leave the house personally, so I was fine with it. But I mean, I hope I would have had the courage to go and open my store the way that the Cordair Fine Arts owners did. They very calmly, not belligerently, they didn't wave AR-15s around. They just very calmly wrote a letter to the city or to the newspaper. I don't remember exactly. And they very clearly stated, we believe we have a right to open this. This is an essential. This is an essential. If anything is, like, we are running our business. We are going to wear masks. We're going to.
What state did they go to do that?
They were living in California and still are.
But they did that. But I thought they moved.
They also
the
opened opened in Wyoming. But my understanding was they started doing that in Napa. So they were doing it in the belly of the beast. If California is.
And notice how the bureaucrats did not punish them. It was a bit like the Reardon trial. So because again, this legislation is. And this emergency measure, it's so difficult to untangle. So some months ago, we heard, for example, that the people who got penalties and who got fines for breaking the lockdown, maybe they would be written off because it would be impossible to, make a case that said you broke this law. So, yeah, I found it.
I think watching, if they would have arrested Quint, I would have enjoyed watching him pull a Howard Rourke on them or a John Galt. It would have been very entertaining. But I think to give a little bow of deference to the American sense of life that's still out there, there were several states that refused to obey with the national orders and broke with the federal government's guidelines. And there's a tremendous amount of pressure from the pundits and the medias and the academic elites and the panicked people who followed them to conform, and they didn't. So I think that still speaks to something that exists in America that's still alive, thank God.
Yeah, I hope so. But I would have liked to see the British do that. And the fact they didn't, I think, contributes to their outrage at a time like this. Do you agree? Do you guys agree with that? And I know, Nikos, you're sort of a little bit rolling your eyes at some of the outrage, right? So
No,
like,
but
I'm thinking,
it's just,
hold on, I'm just saying, so let me just finish my point. People, they complied with the lockdowns. And then when they find out that the boss, that the politician was kissing somebody, they're outraged. Well, you could have been kissing plenty of people too. You could have been just gone and opened your store, or gone to the store, or gone out, done what you wanted, and just basically challenged the authorities and made them put their money where their mouth is. So I wonder if the outrage is in part coming from a place of feeling impotent, like they went along with this when they didn't really need to, and now they're
and that's very healthy. But it should not stop there. It should continue to, what does this tell me about the people who are ruling me? What does it tell me about the we are all in this together? And again, such a great point by Mark. This has altruism written all over, that if I sacrifice, you have to sacrifice. Well, what do you mean you already had COVID and you were not in particular risk? You still should sacrifice. But here's another aspect of the story that I found very, very interesting. And it is the aspect of the personal tragedy of the people involved in this, of the families. And again, we don't know. We don't know, how, if they cheated husband and wife, because the other part of the story, the woman who was involved, she was also married. So again, we don't know the details about their marriage. But how casual we completely leave this aside, for me, is very interesting. And here's another interesting part. So a bishop of Manchester, so let's say a senior religious figure in this country, was asked to give his verdict. And here's what he said. He said, quote, "I'm more interested in the fact that he didn't observe social distancing than the fact that here was a middle-aged bloke having a bit of a fling."
My God.
So I'm the last person who's going to care about religious ethics, but this complete collapse of any idea of authority or of any idea of standards. So here you have, so you're a religious figure, and your pragmatism has put you in the level that says, oh yeah, one of the most important commandments was broken, but I'm worried because social distancing was not observed. So this shows me almost a level of complete non-judgmental. And again, we don't know what happened with their families. We don't know, maybe these people were tortured by their spouses. Who knows? Or maybe their spouses were angels, so they're despicable. But saying that, oh, that's completely irrelevant, particularly when you're a religious figure. I was speechless with that.
It's not irrelevant that I think is being evaded here. According to the accounts of this man's wife, they were happily married for 15 years. That's her claim, of course. She had no idea that this was happening. The affair in and of itself, to me, is not necessarily immoral, depending upon the context, right? Depending on the relationship between the parties and what they know about each other. It's that he hid it from her and he lied about it. And he not only lied about it, he painted a different picture of their relationship to her. Now, that shows a level of hypocrisy. And we see a level of hypocrisy with the way he doesn't care about the rules that he's laying on everybody else. But a whole nother level of hypocrisy with respect to the person who's closest to him in his life. I mean, that should give everybody in England pause. They should say, this man lies to the closest person in his life. That means he's capable of doing it to anyone. And he didn't look like a man beaten or tortured or who felt guilty for what he did. And he didn't even mention his family.
Exactly. That's what I found interesting. He said he mentioned vaguely his loved ones. He didn't mention his wife. And now there are rumors that both of them left their families to now be together. And again, we don't know the context. But at least we should, as we said, pause and think, okay, the fact that we consider this, there's nothing to discuss here. And particularly a religious figure. Again, I don't care about the Christian church. What I care is this complete inability to pass any judgment. This is basically who I am to say. By the way, it reminded me some years ago, I don't remember which Pope it was, this was the previous one, who said, who I am to judge on whether two gay men should get married. Now, fully in favor of gay marriage, myself. But you, I don't know how we pronounce the Pope, your senior, whatever. You have a title which is like 3 lines long, which says that you are the representative of God on earth. The fact that you consider that you are not good enough to pronounce judgment, for me, is more suspicious than the fact that, yeah, it's good that the Catholic Church is becoming more open. It is good that the Catholic Church is becoming more open, but could they tell us why? So have they used, for example, the reason to say, oh, you know what is in the books and what God told us may be under question. This is okay. But what he's saying is not that. What he's saying is, who am I to judge? And of course, we know a fictional hero we all of us like, who says, the person who says, who am I to judge, is the person who says, who am I to live? So I would prefer someone who says, even with their own criteria, I'm judging you as this, rather than someone who says, judgment is impossible. Because the first person, you could say, look, if you tweak your criteria a bit more, next time your judgment would be good. But the person who says, judgment is impossible, I think it's almost a lost cause. There's no hope there.
Look, I mean, so many irrational philosophies out there have so many contradictions, you know. So Christianity on one hand basically says this whole world is basically an illusion. And I think it's the most fundamental reading of it and application, and also morally only God can judge. But then what do we see through history? Christians, it means a lot to them that you believe what they believe, and that they're willing to kill you for being immoral, or at least to shun very strongly. So, I mean, similar with pragmatism, it's supposed to be this very practical, you know, basically fact-based, whatever that even means in their context. Just everything's just solve problems and do what works. But they resist principles so hard that they become this kind of crazy, irrational quasi-philosophy. I don't know, neo-philosophy. I mean, it's a philosophy, but it's the contradictions are so glaring that it just becomes a complete mess. By the way, Marilyn with $2 says, the court heirs are both in California and Wyoming now. Yeah, and I think they were in California when they were challenging the lockdowns. And I think there could have been a chance that we would all have needed to basically fundraise and chip in to get the hottest lawyer in the country to defend them if it had escalated. But yeah, you know, I don't want to downplay what it takes to defy authority when authority represents force. I thought it was great.
Quint, if you're listening, you guys are awesome. You rock.
Absolutely. And everybody head over there immediately to their website, buy some art, and show them.
Go and check out that painting with the boat and the poem that I should have bought it rather than having it on my computer in front of me. But it's difficult to get something seen from the States. But go, the moment you'll see it, the painting with the boat and the poem, you'll know which is it. How inspiring. And we had Quent in one of our events, I think in the beginning of the second lockdown. And if you want a boost in your mood, a boost in the way you view the world. So basically, here's the difference. On the one part, you have spineless politicians with zero principles who tell you one thing and do another. And what I'm saying that I'm not outraged is not non-judgmentalism, but basically what I'm saying is I've been outraged with Matt Hancock long enough. So now I have little outrage left for this scandal. And on the other hand, you have people of the essence, like the Cordairs, or the people who come up with these lines and this view of the world, like this poem. And pick one and your life's going to be much, much better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Gavin Newsom here in California also was caught, I remember, at a restaurant which like specifically went over the allowed number of people to get together, and he was seen in photos being physical or just being very close proximity to people, having a fun dinner with his rich friends, probably on the tax dollars dime as well. I mean, yeah, when you think of corrupt government, that's kind of what comes to mind. Sex and luxury for them while the masses are held down and told what they may do. And I also didn't mean to downplay the severity of the lockdowns, because yeah, even if I decide to open my store, where are the customers coming from? If I'm going to power up, you know, the oven where I'm cooking whatever, the food, and no one is coming in to sit down because they've also been told stay home. It's like these lockdowns are hurting a lot of people. Just generally, it's incalculable how the economy is affected by these types of things. Or where do I get my supplies from if the plastics factory is on lockdown? I mean, it's incalculable.
By the way, that poem I was referring is called "No Sea Was Ever Sailed." I just take it. So, yeah, by Quen Corder. So he wrote the poem and he made the artwork with the ship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of art, I would ask the audience, if you haven't yet, read Ayn Rand's 2 most important novels, as Leonard Peikoff used to put it at the end of his podcast. Start by reading Ayn Rand's 2 most important novels, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. And you might be saying, what do a bunch of novels have to do with philosophy and politics? Pick up a gun, they're thinking. Get a gun. Go out there and push yourself out there and defy the lockdowns. I'm not disagreeing necessarily, not agreeing necessarily. I'm just saying start by reading Ayn Rand's 2 most important novels, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. You'll get it, I hope, and thank me later.
That's very important, because more and more I see that the opposition to lockdowns is blurred with ridiculous conspiracy theories, with ridiculous ideas about the virus itself, about the vaccine. So the lockdowns are too important, and that's why we have to oppose them on principle, and we cannot be even. So if basically between us and Matt Hancock and his crew, Matt Hancock is the one that looks like the voice of reason, we've lost.
Well, and I might also say, not only hokey ideas about conspiracies and the virus and the vaccines, but also hokey ideas about liberty. And it gave the media out here in the United States tons of fodder, so they could show these jerk-offs walking into a Walmart and screaming their heads off, I want to be free, I'm not wearing a mask, you don't have to make me do anything. So everybody who doesn't really think about it got to associate the freedom movement with toothless rednecks, idiot and possibly drunk fools screaming in stores that they had their rights and their rights were being violated. So yeah,
while we're at it, people, you don't have a right to be without a mask in a Walmart, because Walmart is private property. So if Walmart tells you the only way you can enter Walmart is if you're dressed like Goofy or Donald Duck, tough luck. If you don't want, feel free not to go to Walmart.
Yeah, and of course the law probably had a lot to say about that at one point. Now we're at a state where a customer doesn't need a mask, but I see people at restaurants and at stores still wearing masks. I'm hoping that ends soon. Let them have their dignity. It's over, guys. We're vaccinated if we want to be vaccinated, and if not, we're not. Enough. Just time to take off your mask and let loose. That's
interesting.
And just so you know, here in Pittsburgh, they have each store and restaurant puts up a sign that says, come in without a mask if you're vaccinated. Otherwise, we recommend that you wear a mask. And for the most part, walking around any grocery store, you'll see 10% of the people with masks, most of them working. I hear it's the opposite in California. I hear everybody's still wearing masks, even if you're vaccinated. Come on, guys. I get it. I have PTSD as well from this fucking thing. I'm freaked out about being in public a little bit too, but I bite the bullet and I go out there and I put myself out there because I want to normalize my life again. It's time.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting what you said about that. It's the effect this is gonna leave to us is gonna be very difficult to calculate. So how many people? And again, I'm not playing tough guy, including myself. How long it's gonna take to again to feel normal? And the big question, which for me is still unanswered, is this because of the objectivity of the seriousness of the situation? Well, millions of people lost. 2 people, or at least 1 person I knew died from this. So the situation was real. But what is the level of the objectivity of the situation, and what is the level of this culture of fear and almost this nudge, be more afraid? Or you should see now in the UK, So many people with both vaccines get it again, and X amount of people with both vaccines are in the hospital. People understand statistics. First of all, anyway, I don't want to make this about the vaccines, but so we knew, for example, that something that has 95% success means that some people are going to fall out of this margin. But there's this urge to terrorize, this urge to say, it's not over yet, it's not over yet, the new variant. So I wonder, is this PTSD that you said, Mark, is it because of the objectivity of the situation, or that we've put ourselves in this almost social experiment of fear?
For me, it's from the uncertainty of knowing the truth. Because in America, at least, the media has been so utterly biased and so tribalistic. The mainstream media for instilling panic, and the Trump media for denying the existence of this virus and putting forward conspiracy theories. The people who just want to know so that they can make choices for their own lives have been left not knowing, and that partly inspires this. Under those circumstances, thinking about conspiracies isn't entirely nutty, because these media outlets, they're controlled by a cabal of people who are in turn educated by a small cabal of people. It's a very insulated world. It's a lot smaller than people think. So it's quite possible, not that they're consciously doing it, but they certainly have the same ideas and the same sentiments, and they push in certain directions. And anybody who wants the truth is left on the outside. So my PTSD comes from not really knowing what the fuck to do about this virus, because I hear a full circle, a complete circle of insanity. And I'm just left to go with one or two experts who I think I trust, who are objective, and try to follow their advice. It's nerve-wracking.
I'm surprised anything functions at all in such an irrational culture that is in so many ways irrational. Dr. Drew once said, I once heard him say, it's a wonder any TV show gets produced in this town. Maybe you can say if that's true, or if you agree with that sentiment, Mark. He says, considering how difficult it is to get anything greenlit and actually produced and not shelved, etc. He goes, it's a wonder anything gets done in this town. And I kind of look at the culture the same way. There's so much irrationality, so much lack of coherence. The fact anything functions to me is the surprise. So we really need a rebirth of reason and individualism, which it's very hard to convince people of in the midst of an emergency situation. But hopefully we can reach people now.
Let's see. But I really hope that your prediction that it's over is spot on, because I get in the air that it's not, and I get in the air that it's almost impossible to go back to normal, being almost institutionalized to this culture of fear. But anyway, that's for another, and I hope with all my heart that I'm wrong with that.
I think you're right, but I think you're right on a personal level. It's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to go back to some kind of normalcy. But then again, there's the political aspect of what happened and what we allowed to happen. Will the state contract? Does it ever? It really doesn't. And now that they've seen how they can press buttons and how they can get conformity, I am concerned that they'll keep pressing in that direction, or keep finding excuses to determine emergencies that can get under people's skins and make them do their bidding.
Yeah, and people, the fact that Matt Hancock resigned is not in a way a victory for you, because it says you that we continue in the same motto. Sacrifice all for all. If someone doesn't sacrifice, let's throw them to the lions and let's continue to sacrifice. So now the new guy is who took over. Okay, sorry, I might have a brain freeze on his Sajid Javid. So he's someone who is supposed to be, quote, a neoliberal. He's someone who in the past has name dropped Ayn Rand. Of course, he's someone who is in the Tory party, so, don't expect that much. But today he said something such as, well, we have to learn to live with it. There's no way we can eliminate it. And he said, I want the lockdowns to end as soon as possible. So let's see if the, quote, sacrifice or not. No, let's put it, if the throwing under the bus of Matt Hancock has also got to do with the government want to making a U-turn and basically wanting to say, look, we're turning the page. Maybe it's too good to be true. We'll see.
Is Munchausen syndrome Munchausen by proxy a curable mental illness?
I don't know. What's the Munchausen? Is it
Munchausen by proxy is when somebody seeks attention by making, in most cases, it's a mother making her child sick, and then she takes them to the hospital and she gets attention, and then, and she's praised as a hero, and then she brings the child back, makes him sick again, and she does this repetitively, and oftentimes the child dies. I feel like the political class suffers from Munchausen by proxy. They kill us by these lockdowns, or they're trying to kill us. They're making us very ill physically and mentally. And then they try to pretend like they're riding in on the shining white horse to save us from the disasters that they have caused.
Exactly.
So I say, let's cure them of this Munchausen by proxy syndrome immediately.
Because notice that also the governments these days have zero other moral justification. They don't believe in any ideology. So it's impossible to mobilize the population in anything but fear. We're going to save you from climate change. We're going to save you from men who are dangerous and predators. We're going to save you from yourselves. So you're going to stop smoking and being obese and all that stuff. So the nanny state is built on this idea that there is zero moral legitimization for politicians nowadays. And this this saving us from ourselves is the only thing that is left on them. So that's a good point.
All right, we got a last minute can of worms super chat from CJ with $5 Canadian. He says, how can you call Walmart a private company when the government shut down all their competition? It's not a free market anymore. Well, we need to have an episode about that, I think.
The government shut down all their competition.
I mean, the way people are brainwashed by the Tucker Carlsons of the world, they think when Walmart lobbies, that's one thing, and when welfare recipients lobby, that's somehow not.
Oh, wait, let's be just to our friend. He has a point here. He means that, I don't know who is, but with the lockdowns, smaller shops were closed, but you cannot say that Walmart's competition closed. Walmart is not the only place you can.
I don't know if he meant it's because of the lockdowns, or just generally speaking, the fact that Walmart engages in the lobby system means they are a monopoly, whereas everyone else who lobbies is the unions lobbying somehow are not a monopoly. I mean, this will require a full episode. We need to have a good guest, I think, for that day, someone who knows like the actual stats and figures. Walmart is a tremendous success story as a private company. Like everyone else in today's society, they need to lobby in order to exist. And that is a tragedy. Everyone who tries not to lobby, such as Microsoft, then faces antitrust legislation. That's the sad fact. We're living in a mafia system where you need to pay to play, or else you will mysteriously have your store not protected when the time comes. I mean, to single out Walmart as if they're running the show, they're the master of puppets, but the unions are not a monopoly, but the welfare recipients are not, but the other companies, the mid-sized companies, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's just, okay. He says it's because lockdowns shut down small businesses, but not Walmart. Okay, maybe that's true in some places, not where I happen to live.
But whether or not they acquired that through the government, they're an economy of scale, and they're going to outlast the smaller competition when there's a disaster like that. Even if it's a man-made government-caused disaster, they're bigger, so they can absorb the losses much easier.
Of course, there's no situation that the government cannot do war. So many in Greece, for example, complained about this, and what the government did as a solution is you would go to the supermarket and you would go to buy, let's say, a t-shirt or slippers, and you would find a red tape. And the idea is, since you cannot go to the small store, it would be unfair for you to buy these things from the supermarket. So in Greece, around January and February, I would go to the supermarket. I could touch the slipper, but I couldn't buy it, because the idea is, if you cannot buy it from a small shop, go back and buy milk or ham or cheese, but you cannot buy this. And I've got picture photos and stuff, because I realize many of our friends are going to say this is crazy, it couldn't happen. It happened in Scotland, it happened in Wales, I think, but it definitely happened in Greece for months.
My God. I mean, this is just so dumb.
So look, I mean, I know that was a can of worms. We need to wrap it up. As far as Walmart, again, is Walmart doing something different than everyone else? Are they in a different category by lobbying? Yes, they may have gotten a private contract by the government that others are not being given. Let's say you can be open because we trust that you're safe. But again, did Walmart create the lobby system? Is it right to single them out? And also, most importantly, what is your solution? Is your solution that Walmart should now be treated like public property and we all get to take what we want and walk out? What is your solution? Obviously, our solution here on the show is to privatize, divorce government from private property, and we can all move on with our life so we don't have to have these kinds of things. CJ, who do you want to be? Do you want to be smart like me, or does the world need another Tucker Carlson fan? That's a question for you to contemplate tonight as you rock yourself to sleep. Thank you for joining us today. If you guys are ready, we can jump over to Clubhouse.
Yes, sir. And also in 1 hour and 20 minutes from now, Harry Binswanger, HBTV episode number 5 or 6. I don't know.
Coming up. Yeah, that's coming up in an hour and 20 minutes. The
topic is relevant to what we discussed today. The topic is experts. What should be the role of the experts? What does it mean that the science says X? So last week, by the way, the episode with Don Watkins, I was going through it to make short clips. I made a lot of short clips, but it's so good. The whole episode should be basically a short clip. So Harry Binswanger, this is stuff like we're talking about people who operate intellectually at the highest level. So don't miss it in 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Great stuff happening here on the channel. Thank you, CJ, for the last minute super chat, $2 Canadian. He says, I would do the same if I was Walmart. I blame the government. And even more than government, we blame the culture, which is to say we blame philosophy, the way the philosophy permeates in the culture. A lot to get into about Walmart in specific, but generally speaking, philosophy is the final battle. And anyone who tells you otherwise is wrong. I don't need to say anything witty. He's wrong. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Nikos. See you all on Clubhouse momentarily, and goodbye.